Hello, everyone out there in YouTube land. Welcome. It is 3:30 on Wednesday, April 15th, and it is time for AGH at Home. Welcome. My name is Tyler, and together we are going to do some mixed media artwork, some mixed media landscape today. As always, if you're joining in with us and working along, I'm going to give a little bit of time right now for you to kind of gather up supplies if you need to. There should be a list in the description below. I'm going to walk through some of these things. If you're just here to kind of watch, sit back and relax and enjoy some art making. So my example that I have today is this, which I did after. It's not quite finished. I got some stuff to finish up in there. It's partially done. Is modeled after a painting by Emily Carr called Edge of the Forest. At least I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Because this week at AGH at Home, we are looking at a lot of landscape art. Specifically ones from our collection. And Emily Carr was one of the artists that I thought might be pretty recognizable, and I thought we'd kind of go through that a little bit. I wanted to do some mixed media. I could have done, like I could do, and I might in the future do like a full like a painting only kind of workshop. But I still want to make sure that folks like if people don't have paint necessarily, like I still want you to be able to work along with us. So I'm gonna tilt the camera down. Here we go, and let's sort of get right into it. I'm gonna show you all the things I have set up. So first, for tools, I have a couple of things here. I have a scissors, a couple paint brushes, pencil, some markers, some green tape. I have glue, glue stick or white glue. I also have a glue mixture. Last week I used sort of a podge stuff, but I think it was kind of going bad because there was some like chunks in it. So you can kind of make the same thing if you just mix in some white glue with a bit of water. So if you half and half, 1 part water, 1 part glue, then you'll have a nice sort of glue paste that you can sort of paint with. So I've got those. I have some paint here. I've just used some sort of acrylic paint, and I've just sort of squirted some spots on. This is a piece of vinyl. I find that using like a paper plate can work, or even like wax paper works just fine. What else do we have? I have a bucket of water nearby for my brushes. And in terms of materials, I have a handful of things kicking around here. I have a big old pile of collage paper. This is, you might recognize this if you were with us last week. I have lots of this stuff left over, so I'm going to use that again. And as I was preparing for this week, I realized that I didn't really have any green paper because there's lots of trees in this particular painting that you can see there. So what I did instead was I went through my my collection of magazines, and I just sort of cut out magazine pages that had lots of sort of green on them. And I cut them into sort of smaller bits, and I'm going to use those a little bit later on. I also have some cardboard here of a couple different sort of widths. I have some sort of regular thickness cardboard. I also have some from cereal box. This stuff is really, really good because it's nice and flexible. It's still strong, but it's easier to cut because it's nice and thin. So there's that. I've pre-cut a few things to make things a little bit quicker on my end. So yeah, those are some of the things I might add in a couple of things here and there. But the main thing about mixed media is it's taking a couple different types of art making and joining them together to kind of make a unique thing. So what I'm going to do today is take a little bit of drawing, a little bit of collage, and a little bit of painting techniques, and kind of like join them all together to make a mixed media piece. So in theory, you could combine any types of medium that you wanted to. You could do a little bit of painting and then like a little bit of sewing into it. You could do some drawing and then some printmaking over top of it, and that would still be considered mixed media. So it's a very broad type of art making that is very unique to what you like to do or what you want to experiment with. So with that all being said, let's kind of get into this. I'm going to show you how I might walk through this project. I'm going to try and make it look like this one. And again, as I usually say, if you kind of catch yourself going in a different direction or you have your own ideas, absolutely, please do that. I want to see people kind of doing their own things often. You can take some of the things that we learn here and apply it to your own stuff. So to begin, I'm gonna draw it out. I've sketched very lightly with a pencil, which I usually do before, but I'm gonna draw it with marker, with a permanent marker, so that you can see kind of where I've drawn these lines. So I'll put this beside so you can kind of see what I'm working with here. So when I start with this here, I kind of look for the biggest sort of section. So I've got a big chunk of sky up here and a big sort of tree line, and there's these big dots that are treetops, and I've got this stuff down here. So I'm going to separate it as simple as I possibly can. I'm going to fill in or add in details a little bit later. So just simple lines. It's kind of like curves down. You can kind of like do a bit of the kind of jaggedy tree things, but in mine here, I'm going to be covering a lot of that up, so it doesn't really matter how detailed your stuff is. In this painting, the pine tree starts at the line just all the way to the top. It goes almost right through the middle, just to kind of orient myself and I can see where it's going. Then the treetop is kind of a bit of a triangle. There's this thing here. There's a couple little smaller trees, kind of like this. And then my kind of wood stump pile thing down there. Okay, so that's my initial sketch. Very, very simple. Not worried about details. I'm just mainly trying to get things mapped out. And now I'm going to start filling in with a couple different mixed media techniques. So I'm going to start with my background. When I'm working with landscape, I like to start from the back and work forward. So I'm going to do all of the sky section first, then I'm going to move down to this tree area, and then after that, I'm going to add in the smaller details on top. So for the sky, I'm going to start with some collage. I'm going to, let's see, use this sheet of paper, and I know I'm covering up a lot of that already, but I've got my other piece here that I can kind of use as a reference. You could make it fit in this space, but I'm going to kind of, maybe I'm going to tear a little bit so that I have kind of an organic line. I know it's, yeah. Okay, so let's start with that. I'm going to use the glue stick for this one because I want this to sort of set in pretty quickly. Okay, there we go. And I really like, you know, those sort of, I like hand tearing when I'm doing paper collage, especially for like a background and a sky and like big hills. You get a really kind of organic look and feel. Okay, I want that piece, I think, kind of in there, but I don't need that. So I'm gonna rip that off. Rip this out. And as always, when you're working with collage, I think we talked about it a little bit last week. Snip there. It's totally okay if stuff hangs over the edge. That's a super easy thing. In fact, don't even worry about that. You can always go back afterwards and just trim that stuff right off. Or you can, like, if it's bothering you now, you can kind of fold it behind like that, or you can cut it as you're going. But I find if you're trying to, like, you know, cut things to fit specifically, you know, I prefer to put a thing down and then trim it off after, so I'm not worrying about that too much. Oh, that came from there. Okay, so that's enough for the blue. But if you look at the painting, she's got this very kind of very brush stroke-ish kind of sky going. So I'm going to bring a little bit of paint in. What I've used, I've got some bright green. I don't even know if I'm going to use that. I've got blue, some yellow, and this here is this is called Naples yellow. I'm not going to use straight white for this because it's going to turn my blue a little bit. I don't know, kind of minty, I guess. And I want the sky to go a little more kind of green. And I want that kind of cream color. Okay, so I'm gonna pull out a little bit of blue here. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of like pulling the paint out, flipping the brush over, kind of pushing it back in, loading it up. You can get a little bit of this white on here. So I've got a bit of a sort of a variety of colors on my brush there. And then I'm going to start making some nice big, some big swatches, and they're kind of like going in a circle around where the tree area might be. So I'm going to sort of put those in. Just going to keep going in there. And this is going to add a little bit more texture to my sky. And I'm trying to make very individual brush strokes that are kind of going, kind of following a bit of a direction here. It's almost going to look a bit like there's a halo around my tree. There we go. I think that's probably good for now. I don't want to do too much because I'm still working on the background. So I'm going to wash my brush and set it aside. I might come back to the painting for some other stuff. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of work in this area a little bit. And I think for that, I'm going to use some of the green paper that I pulled out, but I'm also going to lay down a bit of brown. And this is where I'm going to do some cutting as well. Where did my scissors go? There they are, underneath everything. So I'm not getting too precise here. I'm just getting a little more detailed. Yeah, that'll work. Let's put some of this glue stick down. Sort of lay that in there. Now, this isn't the color that I want for this area not entirely at least, but this is the sort of the under color that I want. And then this piece, I'm going to maybe use that. Yeah, that'll probably work there nicely. And my painting is, or my artwork is already sort of taking a little, bit of a different direction from Emily Carr's original, which is absolutely okay. You want it to be your own. There. So now on top of this, I'm going to start laying out some of the green, which I've some of it I've cut into some very sort of basic tree forms of varying different sizes. So I've got some really small stuff in here, and I'm going to start by laying the small stuff down first. I'm going to use actually this glue for this one. A little bit of that. Put that down there. And these little treetops, I'm going to have them kind of poking above my brown. And I'm going to be laying these in quite a bit. So that way, any sort of area in between my tree tops, it ends up being darker brown as opposed to the white of the paper. So if I have little, spaces that I might have missed, then I've got a bit of, it's almost like the brown is like a net, that kind of, like a safety net that kind of catches all the mistakes or the little areas that I might have missed. Okay, so I've got a few on there. I'm going to put a little bit of paste over top. There we go. And then I'm going to start with some larger tree shapes and forms. And I'm going to overlap these here so you can see all the jagged edges on the bottom. I don't want that to be showing, but I'm going to overlap those so that it just looks like I can just see kind of the treetops kind of pointing out. And I'm just kind of going quick so that I can kind of fill in this area, but you'll get the idea. I'm kind of filling in this area with some green paper that are sort of generally tree shaped. And I want it to be sort of varied a little bit so that it just doesn't look like a flat kind of green space. Okay, so I'm going to carry that down maybe all the way to the bottom. Let's see. Actually, maybe I'll use some of that in there. Yeah. Okay, so now I've got a much darker color, almost a brown in there. And I will be putting some things over top of this, so I'm not too worried about detail and things like that just yet. I'm getting a little bit more detailed or a little bit more careful since I'm basically working on the what would be the middle ground. So stuff that is far away but not too far away. Just a little spot over there. So let's put a little something. Actually, I'll put this. Yeah. One got away from me. There we go. Okay. Great. Okay, I'm happy with that for now. Fold this under there, and I'll hold this up so you can see my progress. you know, if I was taking more time, I would probably spend a little more time on these tree parts, but that's all right. And now I can see I want some more sort of paint lines there because I've only gone this high with that. So I'm going to grab my paintbrush, grab a little bit more of this paint, not too much, just put a few dots and dashes in there. I still want to be able to see the individual strokes. There we go. All right. So now I've got my background, I've got my foreground. Now I'm going to, or sorry, my middle ground, and now I'm going to start putting in that big giant tree and those smaller trees. So I'm going to use these cardboard bits here for that because they step out nice and thick. So I'm going to select a few of those, and I'm going to use this, which I cut from a Raisin Bran box. This is going to be sort of the trunk that goes through the whole middle of the thing. Okay, let's use, I don't have a whole lot of sort of method between which glue I'm using in which spot. A little bit I do, but I mostly just kind of going back and forth just to show you that you really can, you know, mix it up with the glue. You could use the glue stick for the whole entire thing if you wanted to, and it would be just fine. Or you could use the paste. I didn't measure that entirely, but that's okay. I'm going to sort of put this just sort of right on top there. This one, I am going to use the glue stick because I want that to dry quicker. Looks like I need to get a new glue stick. All right, so I'm going to pop that on there, give it a little bit of a wiggle and a push. And I'm going to go now to my other smaller tree things. Now, to cut a circle or an oval, a nice little trick is to cut yourself a square to begin. And then I kind of go around cutting the corners off like that. That way you're not, you know, trying to take a big old piece of cardboard and you cut and there's like a little tiny circle in the middle. It's just a whole lot easier to cut and control it that way. So I'm going to cut that in half. The smaller your cuts are on cardboard, the kind of easier it'll be because you can get more leverage in there. And I want this one to be longer, so I'm going to cut it kind of like this. Okay, and then let's see, maybe one more, maybe a small one, little baby. Okay, and while I'm cutting my cardboard, I've also cut some pieces like this that I'm going to use down at the bottom here, and I'll demonstrate that in just a sec. Okay, let's put these on. My glue stick is empty. I'm going to use the white glue this time, which is just as good. I'm just going to have to wait a little bit longer for it to dry completely. Now those trees, let's maybe put smaller and a thinner tree trunk. Like that. Like that. Cut the bottom off there. Yoink, yoink. Okay, and to get a nice green. Oh, I forgot these ones. I'm just going to put actually one just on this side. I know that there's another one on the other side, but I'm just going to do one over there for today. I'm going to go back to my paint. You could use really for this. You could use pastel. You could use crayons. You could use pencil crayons. But I'm going to add a little bit of color to my treetops here. So I'm just gonna kind of scumble it or kind of scrape it across or dab it. I want some of that brown to kind of show through, right? There's when you're looking at a tree, it's not just a big green thing necessarily. There's little bits of brown, like the branches kind of showing through. There we go. It's good, I think. And for the sort of final touches, or at least to finish it off for today, so I'm gonna kind of get some glue going down there, and I'm gonna line these up sort of varied. And maybe to finish it off, I'll put a nice little stubby one down there. There. And there you have it. So that is using some paint, some paper, collage, pasting, and some cardboard and things like that. So I'd love to see if you've made something. I would love to see your creation. Please share it with us if you would like to. You can share it with us on Facebook or on Instagram. Use the hashtag AGH at home right there. And then we can show it to all of our friends, which would be super super great. So once again, from all of us here at AGH at home, hope you have a really lovely rest of your day and rest of your week. It's been lovely. So we'll see you. Hopefully we'll see you again next week.